If you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe and become part of this community. Oh, and also, go cop that fresh merch and listen to my new album in the description. Trippie Redd released his new album, Trip at Night, last Friday on August 20th. And this was an album that a lot of fans were very excited for. This was the album that everybody immediately started talking about after Pegasus dropped. You know, I made videos before even the deluxe of Pegasus dropped talking about, you know, how Trip at Night was going to be the next one, because we of course had a lot of snippets for this, a lot of leaks, you know, not to mention the Mr. Rage leak that he also released as a single beforehand. It was one of the two singles used to promote this album. This was the one that I liked more. We also had that Holy Smoke single with Lil Uzi, which I didn't like as much. I thought it was very skeletal. I didn't like how they used their voices on it, but I already talked about that quite often already, and a lot of you guys like that track, so I'm not gonna bash it any further. But we finally got the full thing on Friday, and it is 18 tracks or 17 tracks, because he later on, the day after, on Saturday, also released the complete edition of the album with a new track on, you know, spot 3. This one is called Betrayal, featuring Drake. It was also featured on the track list, and everybody was going crazy about that Drake feature, but then he for some reason removed it again from the pre-order album version. Everybody was talking about, oh, he fumbled the bag again getting that Drake feature, but apparently he just wanted to wait a day to give it to all of us. But we're going to talk about this album now, give my thoughts on it, and if I think that this is actually a good step in Trippie's direction. So let's start off, because there's, as I said, quite some tracks on here, but there's already my first kind of criticism for this thing. 18 tracks is already quite a lot. It is more than I would prefer to see on an album. This again hints at somewhat of a flooding the market strategy. We already saw the same thing happen with Pegasus with 26 tracks. Of course, that is still more, but 18 tracks is quite a lot already, and these tracks really sound the same. There's this really funny you know, TikTok or video that someone made, that somebody posted in the Discord. And by the way, if you're not part of the Discord, you're missing out, because on there we're talking about all the leaks, all the new albums, all the, you know, new stuff that came out, also Trip at Night. So make sure you go join that Discord in the description. But on there we had a funny video about someone just playing the beginnings of basically a lot of these tracks, and they all sounding the same. These rage beats, these are exclusively rage beats on here, really have somewhat of the same chord progression or the same style and the same synths that they use. So just watch this video because it's really funny.
Wow. Cyberspace.
So as you can see, or as you can hear, a lot of these sound the same, and listening to this at some point it's really a drag, because you've heard the same beat over and over again, and Trippie's writing doesn't really, you know, add to it because it's not that interesting. Sometimes the flows are very similar. I feel like I've heard this Trippie song 1,000 times before. I feel like these are all just different interpretations of Mr. Rage and Holy Smokes, and I know a lot of you guys are into that. A lot of you guys were telling me like, oh, if you didn't like Holy Smokes, then you're probably not gonna like a lot of this album, and I guess that's true. I guess that's just my own personal problem with a lot of these generic rage beats. Now, I'm not the biggest rage beats or rage type fan anyway, but that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate a really good one. Mr. Rage, amazing. I've been listening to that track ever since it came out, and I'm really happy listening to that. Holy Smokes, though, just kind of seems a bit generic, and I don't like it as much. I know a lot of you guys like it, and that's great, but for me, it's probably just not the thing for me. Now, let's turn to some positives, though, because I do believe that this album does hold some hidden gems that I want to point out for anybody still going into this. The first one I would say is the second half of Supernatural. On there, we have a little switch up, and Trippie just really goes hard. I really enjoyed listening to that, because that was really a highlight after I went through just, you know, 7 tracks before that, with 2 of which I had already heard, and 5 of which just sounded the same, because honestly, the first 5, even though when you listen to them individually, for example, MP5 with Sofago also got a video, and when I'm watching the video and I'm listening to the music there, it does go hard, but just in the context of the whole album, it's just, you know, washed in and blended in with everything else. But Supernatural was really a highlight. The second highlight for me was Matt Hardy 999 with Juice WRLD, of course, not because it's a Juice WRLD feature. I already expressed my kind of skepticism about a Juice WRLD feature in 2021 already, but this one is actually pretty good. We got a leak for this a long time ago. This is not a song that was just made after Juice passed, rest in peace, but they actually worked on this while he was still alive, so I can accept it. That's a really good track. That was probably my highlights from the album, because after that it just kind of goes downhill again and kind of just goes into being forgettable vibes, New Money, Space Time, Baki, iPhone. I feel like I can't remember a single thing from these tracks even after listening to them a couple of times, because they're very short. They're like 2 minutes in length, and sometimes I think Space Time is just below 2 minutes, and some of these are just very generic. They're so bland in the writing, so bland in the production. It's just not very interesting listening to them, let alone listening to them in succession right after another, the way he put them on the track list. That Danny Phantom track with XXXTentacion was actually okay. I liked X's verse on there. I think I've heard this before. There was already, leaks on there. It's his verse from back in 2018 when it was still made for this, so I'm okay with that. We also had that Polo G and Lil Durk feature on Rich MF, which I didn't mind too much either. I like to see them on these types of instrumentals, but it wasn't really an exciting track, just kind of what you would expect from a Trippie Redd, Polo G and Lil Durk song. What I do want to point out though is that the visuals so far for this thing, we have videos for Mr. Rage, for Holy Smokes, and also for MP5, are incredible. Especially that MP5 video took a lot of effort to make, and I really appreciate that. So shout out to Trippie for being on his visuals game, because that's always very important. He also released a visual trailer before the album dropped, kind of introducing the album, kind of seeing what it's about. So I like that he's somewhat wanting to create a story with this. Let's talk about that Drake track a little bit as kind of like the last thing to touch on. It was kind of weird to hear Drake on a rage beat like this. It somehow worked. The more I'm listening to it, the less weird and unfamiliar it sounds, and Drake actually did a pretty good job. He used his voice in a way that you could really tell was he was trying to fit on there. So the more and more I listen to it, the more I become accustomed to it, and the more I can actually like this. But at the first listen, it did really sound weird. I guess a lot of you also had that experience. So that's my thoughts on Trippie Redd's new album Trip at Night. Some highlights on there that I mentioned, but also a lot of just forgettable stuff on here, but I kind of knew that going into it. So this is for me not it. We had 2-3 highlights on there, but the rest is really just duds in the playlist. But I know that he has a lot of fans that go crazy for his rage stuff, so I guess he's catering to them, not my music. But that's all good, man. I'm just giving my thoughts on here. That's my opinion. Now I want to know what you think about this. Were you excited for this album? What are your favorite tracks? What are your least favorite tracks? What do you think of that Drake feature? What do you think of the Juice WRLD, the X feature, and just your general thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. If you watched this video to the end and liked it, and you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that like button, and go follow my social media and blog down in the description. It really helps me out. Until the next one, y'all have an incredible day, and y'all take care.